On today's episode of The Franchise, today is Thursday, January 12th, 2023. Today's episode, I'm going to give out my top 10 first basemen heading into the 2023 MLB season. Yesterday's episode, we gave out the top 10 catchers. We're going to continue to go position by position, giving out the top 10 players at each position heading into the new MLB season. Also going to go through the quarterback carousel this offseason. What teams need a new starting quarterback? And then what starting quarterbacks are available to be signed. We won't go over the ones that need to be drafted. We'll do that later on as we get closer to the NFL draft. And then where will Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton sign as head coaches? Both of them are likely, or at least rumored, to become NFL head coaches. There's 5 teams available. Which 2 will they go to? But before we get into it, the franchise, as always, is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Instagram, TikTok, in the description of the episode. Make sure you are followed, subscribed there as well. Getting things off with the top 10 first basemen. Yesterday we did the top 10 catchers. If you want to check that out, it's in yesterday's podcast. Make sure you go check that one out. But top 10 first basemen. I'm not basing this off of where I project them to be at the end of the 2023 season. This is based off of purely last season and somewhat of what they've done in their past, but it is based off of last season and then a few years prior what they've done in their career. So beginning things off at number 10, the 10th best first baseman in Major League Baseball, I have Anthony Rizzo from the New York Yankees. Taking a look at what he did last season at the plate, at least 32 home runs, 224 average, 338 on base, 480 slugging, 818 OPS. Anthony Rizzo has done this for a very long time. He's won a World Series with the Chicago Cubs, and he's been a very consistent 25 to 30 home run guy at the first base position. He doesn't play particularly great on the defensive side as a first baseman, but his offense is really what carries him to this high of a level, especially at 33 years old, continuing what he does at the plate. And now with the Yankees, with a short portion right field, that definitely helps out his batting statistics, his home runs, his RBIs, and all of that. For the Yankees, he doesn't walk, or he walks particularly well. Doesn't strike out a lot either. And he has one of the highest exit velocities in the game. But like I said, his defense at first base, at that first base position, is not particularly well. One thing I noticed, though, when I was doing this list, looking at defense, there's only like 2 guys in the top 10 that are actually like positive defenders at the first base position. I'll make sure to highlight those guys when we get to them, because all of these other first basemen are below average in terms of outs above average and arm strength and other defensive metrics. But Anthony Rizzo is at number 10. At number 9 is Jose Abreu from the Houston Astros, formerly Chicago White Sox. He's one of the best power hitting first basemen in the league. He won an MVP in the 2020 season. This past year, 15 home runs, 304 average, 378 on base, 446 slugging, 824 OPS. He's always a guy that's going to be a 300 average hitter. He's one of the best hitters at the first base position. I mean, his advanced statistics show you he's in the 97th percentile in hard hit, 89th in exit velo, 98th in X batting average, X WOBA 96th. He's a pretty solid defensive first baseman when it comes to outs above average in the 64th percentile. Jose Abreu, though, his offense is really what carries him. He's won an MVP, despite it being in a 2020 season. He won the MVP. He's always a guy that's going to hit 300 or better. He's going to blast, in some years 20 plus, maybe even 30 plus home runs. And now him going to the Astros to be a first baseman of a team that is the best team in baseball, I'd expect Jose Abreu to be very, very productive next season for the Astros. He comes in at number 9. At number 8, I think this guy's very underrated. That's going to be Luis Arias from the Minnesota Twins. He's only 25. Last season, All-Star, 8 home runs, 316 average that led all of the American League. He won the American League batting title. 375 on base, 420 slugging, 795 OPS. He has the best strikeout rate in baseball. He doesn't strike out at all, and he doesn't swing and miss at pitches at all. He's in the 100th percentile in both K and whiff rate. But like it is with a lot of these first basemen, their outs above average in terms of their defensive play is very poor. But his offense makes up for that. He's one of the best hitters in the game. Obviously leading the league in batting average, winning the batting title. Very, very good. Very underrated first baseman for the Minnesota Twins is Luis Arraez. Coming in at number 7 is Christian Walker from the Diamondbacks. I didn't know how good this guy was until I looked up his stats, his advanced stats, because his baseline stats are pretty solid. I mean, they're really good. Last season with Arizona, Christian Walker, 36 home runs, 242 average, 327 on base, and a 477 slugging, with 804 OPS. And he's one of the best defensive first basemen in Major League Baseball, in the 99th percentile in terms of outs above average. He's a great slugger, hits for power, gets on base, and he hits dingers. And he's I think he's a very underrated player. I didn't realize how good he was defensively either. I thought he was going to be one of these guys that was just an offensive power threat at the first base position, but he's one of the, if not the best defender at the first base position. So he's at number 7. And number 6 is Ty France from the Mariners. All-star last season for Seattle. 20 home runs, 274 average, 338 on base, 436. Slugging, 774 OPS. He doesn't strike out a lot, but he also doesn't walk a lot either. But, as it is with a lot of these guys, Ty France's defense is not particularly great. So with a lot of these first basemen, with their defense being so poor, it's really just based off of offense and who's the most productive offensively. I think Ty France. I know Christian Walker might have had a better season, but Ty France, younger, more versatile. He can play a lot of different positions. And just what he did last season, I think he was very productive for a Seattle Mariners team that ended up making the postseason. He comes in at number 6. Entering the top 5, we got Matt Olson of the Atlanta Braves, former Gold Glove winning first baseman, one of the best defenders at that first base position. Last season, 34 home runs with a 240 average, 325 on base, 477 slugging, 802 OPS. He does strike out a lot. That is the one thing with Matt Olson. He doesn't really hit for average. He strikes out a lot, but he does walk a lot. And when he connects with the ball, not only does he hit it very hard, he usually hits it, on the barrel every single time. His barrel percentage is among the highest, along with his velo and hard hit percentage. Those are all within the top 90 percentile in the game of baseball. And his outs above average is very good as well. Matt Olson, for the past few seasons, has been a very, very good first baseman, and now with the Atlanta Braves, one of the best teams in baseball. I mean, he can easily climb up this list and be a top 3 first baseman in the next few seasons. He's at number 5. Number 4 is Pete Alonso from the Mets, home run derby champ, 40 home runs last season, 870 OPS, 518 slugging, 271 average. He can hit the ball very hard, very far. And he's just a very good and productive offensive first baseman. He's one of the best power hitters in the game. He doesn't walk a lot. He doesn't strike out a lot. He does chase and swing and miss a lot of pitches. And as always, with these first basemen, his defense is very, very poor. But Pete Alonso, with what he's able to do at the plate, I mean, he hit the most home runs out of any of these first basemen on this list last season. He's going to come in at number 4. Number 3 is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. 2 years ago, 2021 season, finished second in MVP voting. If it wasn't for Shohei Ohtani, Vladimir Guerrero would have won the MVP. 32 home runs last year, 819 OPS, 274 average, 339 on base percentage. Vladdy is one of the best young offensive players in the game. He's in the 99th percentile in terms of max exit velocity, so he hits the crap out of the ball. He can hit it as hard as anyone else in the sport, and he's able to hit for average along with power, which, a lot of these young power hitters, they don't hit for average as well. They don't get on base. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is able to sustain a above league average batting average. He's able to get on base, and he's able to hit, massive amounts of home runs for the Toronto Blue Jays. He comes in at number 3. Number 2 is going to be, number 2 and number 1. Personally, if I was to build my own team, I'd rather have this guy right here at number 2 than the number 1. I just think this guy right here is a better player. That's a guy that I'd rather have. And it's Freddie Freeman. He comes in at number 2 in the top 10 first baseman. He's been one of the best players in the game for the last, for the last 10 years, he's been one of the best players in the sport. First year with the Dodgers last year, didn't disappoint. 21 home runs, 325 batting average, 407 on base. His batting average actually, his on base percentage led the National League. The 407 on base, 511 slugging, 918 OPS. And looking at the advanced stats for Freddie Freeman, he's one of the best players in the sport. I have him as the second best first baseman. I think he's he's probably a top 25 player in the game of baseball. He doesn't strike out. He walks a lot. He doesn't swing and miss a lot. He hits the ball hard. He hits the ball for average. He hits the ball to all fields. And at the first base position, he's a very, very productive defensive player, which is something I like to see. I'm a big proponent on defense. At the first base position, I guess defense isn't needed as much. Can you pick it when your position players, your infielders make a bad throw? Are you able to stick to the bag? And then when the ball's hit your way, are you flat-footed? Are you slow? Do you have the range and versatility to get the ball to your right or to your left? I think that's something I think is very important on the defensive side. And at first base, maybe not as much as other positions, but Freddie Freeman is an athlete, 33 years old, and he's on the Dodgers team. That's one of the best teams in baseball. I think if I was starting a team and I could pick a first baseman, I would pick Freddie Freeman. But he's at number 2. Number 1 is Paul Goldschmidt, reigning National League MVP. And last season with the St. Louis Cardinals, the MVP year, 35 home runs, 317 average, 404 slugging, 578 OPS, or 578 slugging, 982 OPS. At 35, he's able to hit the ball hard. He's able to hit it far, and he hits it to all fields as well. His defense is very bad. He's a poor defender, but his offense carries him. Obviously, his offense won him an MVP award last season with the Cardinals. He walks at an extremely high rate, and he's just able to get on base and drive in runs and hit home runs. He had 115 RBIs last season. And I think RBI is a pretty important stat. He's able to drive in runs, which is the name of the game, is to score more runs than your opponent. So Paul Goldschmidt is at number 1. I think that's mainly because of his MVP title, and also he had a great offensive season. But for me, I'd rather have Freddie Freeman. And I know it's my list, and I could put Freddie Freeman at number 1. But I will, be out of respect for Paul Goldschmidt, put him as the best first baseman in baseball. Recapping this list, number 10 is Anthony Rizzo, 9, Jose Abreu, 8, Luis Arias, 7, Christian Walker, 6, Ty France, 5, Matt Olson, 4, Pete Alonso, 3, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 2, Freddie Freeman, and number 1, Paul Goldschmidt. Those are the top 10 first basemen. Next episode will be the top 10 second basemen as we continue to work around the diamond, and then we'll get to the pitching mound. We'll do starters, relievers, and then we'll end it off with probably a top 100 players or a top 50 players. Definitely a top 10 players. We'll see how many more we do. before we get to the start of the MLB season. What teams will need a NFL quarterback this offseason? There's going to be a good amount of quarterbacks available in free agency or on the trade market. And just taking a look, I think there's 3 teams that are guaranteed to need a quarterback entering the offseason. The Texans, the Colts, and the Raiders. I think those are the 3 teams that, as of today, you can guarantee will have a new quarterback at the start of next season. So those are the 3 guarantees. Those are the 3 locks, in my opinion. But I think there's a lot of other teams that could make a quarterback change, and those are the Chicago Bears. Talked about it yesterday. They could trade Justin Fields, and they could draft a Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud at number 1. I have the Rams. Maybe they move on from Stafford. Maybe they move on from Baker Mayfield. Maybe they grab one of these guys that is a free agent or on the trade market. I don't think it's likely. I think they do ride it back with Matthew Stafford. But you never know. They could make a quarterback change, especially if Sean McVay does leave their head coaching position. The Atlanta Falcons, I don't expect Marcus Mariota to be back. They could, draft a guy. They could make a move on the trade or free agent market. But I do know that they do have a young quarterback in Desmond Ridder that they could ride out with next season. The New Orleans Saints, I think this is a team that does need to go out and get a quarterback. Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton are not the answer. Andy Dalton shouldn't be getting a starting quarterback play at all in this league. I think they need to go. If I'm the Saints, you got to draft a guy. But if they don't decide to draft a player because they don't have a first-round pick, I think the trade market or the free agent market is the way to go for them. The Panthers, Sam Darnold is going to be a free agent. Don't think it's likely they bring him back. They need to go in a direction where they draft a young quarterback. The Titans, with Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis, I think it's likely that they make a quarterback change. They could be one of those teams that drafts a guy late in the draft, like a Hendon Hooker or a Stetson Bennett, or they could, make a move for one of these big free agent quarterbacks. The Jets, what are they going to do with Zach Wilson and Mike White? I think it's likely they keep both of them. New England, is Mac Jones the guy? There's, always talk that Mac Jones could be on his way out. Washington Commanders, I don't think Taylor Heineke or Carson Wentz is the answer. Sam Howell might actually be that guy, but they could make a quarterback change. Tampa, Tom Brady will be leaving after this season. He's either going to retire or he's going to be on a new team. So Tampa's going to need to find their next quarterback. Baltimore, I think it's likely Lamar is franchise tagged if he's not extended. There's no way Lamar's on a new team next season. But in the wild possibility that Lamar is, the Ravens will need a new quarterback. And then the Seahawks. Do they draft a guy? Do they re-sign Geno? I think you have to re-sign Geno after the season he just had. But you have to put him on this list because you never know what may happen this offseason. So those are teams that could make a quarterback change. So then what quarterbacks are available via free agency or the trade market this offseason? Tom Brady, 45 years old, going to leave Tampa Bay this offseason. He's either going to retire or he's going to go and join a new team. Baker Mayfield, his contract's up. He'll probably sign somewhere as a backup with the potential to be a starter. Same thing for Sam Darnold. Jimmy Garoppolo, coming off of his injury, it's unlikely. I think it's a 0% chance that he returns to San Francisco. Next season, San Francisco will both have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. They have to decide between one of the two. Jimmy G could find himself on a team that just needs... Jimmy G's led a team. He's been the quarterback of a team that's been to a Super Bowl. You just need to find a team that's great defense and offensive pieces, and Jimmy Garoppolo can lead that team to the playoffs. Teddy Bridgewater's going to be a free agent. Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Mike White, potentially Lamar Jackson, Taylor Heineke, Drew Lock, and Derek Carr. I want to start with Derek Carr. He made a post today on his social medias saying goodbye to the Raider Nation. So it looks like he's on his way out. I mean, that was expected, 3 weeks ago, when he was benched for Jarrett Stidham. It was basically a sign that Derek Carr is going to be on his way out. He will not be the quarterback of the Raiders next season or going forward into the future. He does still have, a contract. He's still on the books with the Raiders. They have until February 15th to decide what they do, if they trade him or cut him, because after that, $40.5 million is guaranteed to Derek Carr for the next season. So they need to look at either trading him or cutting him. So we'll start with Derek Carr, and then we'll move on to Tom Brady, because I think those are the two, and we'll also do Jimmy Garoppolo, but Tom Brady and Derek Carr are the two biggest names on the free agent market at the quarterback position. I don't think Lamar touches free agency. I think he either gets a contract extension or franchise tagged by the Ravens. So where does Derek Carr and where does Tom Brady go this offseason? Tom Brady, I think the talk is going to be the Raiders. I think that makes sense. They have Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller. They have his former offensive coordinator with the Patriots, Josh McDaniels, as his head coach, playing in Las Vegas. I think if Tom Brady goes there, you'll find some other veteran players finding their way to Las Vegas with the Raiders to potentially ride it out for one last Super Bowl. I think this will be Tom Brady's last season. If he signs with the Raiders or with whatever team, it's going to be his last year in the NFL. He'll be 46 unless he decides to play to 50, which would be freaking crazy. So I think the Raiders are a possibility for Tom Brady. Just looking at this list here, none of these teams really seem... I think maybe Tennessee, but Tennessee doesn't have the offensive weapons that the Raiders have. You could make a case for the Jets, but I don't see Tom Brady playing in the division with not only Josh Allen and the Bills, but also his former New England Patriots. And then I do think it is possible he returns to New England for one final season, one final run at a championship. Maybe Mac Jones rides the bench behind Tom Brady, learns from the GOAT, and Tom Brady tries to take his lifelong team for one more Super Bowl, for Super Bowl number 8 for him, 7 for the organization. So that is a possibility for Tom Brady. I think it's really two teams. I think the Raiders are the most likely destination. I don't think he returns to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's either retirement or the Raiders for me, where Tom Brady decides to go. And then Derek Carr. I think there's a lot more options for Derek Carr. I could see the New York Jets being a team that goes after him. With Wilson and White, you got to make a decision. I think you trade Zach Wilson. I don't think Zach Wilson has shown any promise. I don't think he will get better. You just look at the film he has. He makes stupid throws, bad throws, a lot of interceptions, underthrown, overthrown receivers. I think you add Derek Carr to a Jets team with one of the best defenses in the league. They had a great defense this past season, and they have the potential to add to that wide receiver room. They're going to get Breece Hall back at running back. They have Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. You could add another wide receiver to that team. And I think the Jets getting Derek Carr become a team that could sneak into the playoffs and make a wild card spot. I think you have to look at Tampa Bay. If they lose Tom Brady, you could just see an easy swap. Brady and Carr swap teams. That makes sense. Atlanta, New Orleans, the Titans make sense for Derek Carr. That's actually a really nice fit in Tampa Bay. And then Washington, New England. I think all of the teams on the could list make sense for Derek Carr. One team I won't say is the Colts. I think the Colts are going to go in the direction of drafting one of these young quarterbacks in the draft. A lot of these teams on the could list are going to end up drafting a guy in the draft. But in terms of Brady and in terms of Derek Carr, I think those are the teams that they could go to. And then Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go wherever Brady and Derek Carr don't go for a team that's competitive. Let's say Derek Carr goes to the Titans and Brady goes to the Raiders. I could see Jimmy Garoppolo being on the Jets, being on the Buccaneers, being on a team that is about to compete. And looking at these other guys, Geno Smith's going to re-sign with the Seahawks. Lamar will be a member of the Ravens. Washington, they have Sam Howell. They could look to re-sign Taylor Heineke. The Saints, I think they should draft a guy. The Panthers need to draft a guy. The Falcons, wait till next season to draft a guy. So there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and there's a lot of quarterbacks available on the free agent market. Just not a lot of them, are guys that are going to push you over the edge and becoming a competitive team. And then finally, for today's episode, Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh. These are the two guys. Sean Payton, in particular, is really the top head coach on the market. A lot of teams requesting to interview him for their head coaching vacancy. And the 5 teams are the Texans, Broncos, Colts, Cardinals, and Panthers. Those are the 5 teams that are in search of a new head coach. The thing with Sean Payton is his rights still belong to the New Orleans Saints. So whatever team wants him, they first have to request permission from the Saints to interview him. And then if they agree, if Sean Payton agrees that, yeah, I'll go to the Denver Broncos, well, then the Broncos have to trade with the Saints to get him. They have to, and the price right now is apparently a first-round pick to get Sean Payton to be your head coach. Of these 5 teams, which ones will Sean Payton go to, and which ones won't? I don't think he goes to the Panthers. I don't really see them having a positive direction despite winning 7 games last season. I think they're going to go with a different head coach. I don't see him going to the Colts. The Colts, actually, I don't know. I don't see him going to the Texans. I think the Texans is the worst run organization in the NFL. I don't think any head coach should sign with the Texans, especially if you're the stature of Sean Payton. The Broncos are an interesting one. It's apparent that Sean Payton wants to have Vic Fangio be his defensive coordinator. The thing is, he was once the head coach of the Denver Broncos not too long ago. So if Payton goes to the Broncos, it's unlikely that Fangio becomes the coordinator just because he was already the head coach there. I think Sean Payton ends up going to the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray. Potentially, if they decide to keep DeAndre Hopkins and give him an extension, and they will have, the number 3 overall pick in the NFL draft. The Cardinals are a team that, if they play this offseason right with Sean Payton, with Kyler Murray, they could be developing into a team that could compete in the NFC West. The Rams look like they're on the way down. The Seahawks, they had a great year this year, but you never know what could happen next season. The Niners will always be at the top of that division with that defense. So if you add Sean Payton to the Cardinals, I think that's the most likely fit for him. And then Jim Harbaugh, I think it's likely he leaves Michigan to go to the NFL. So we'll say the Cardinals job is locked up. I think he's going to the Denver Broncos with Russell Wilson to try and take them to what they were supposed to do this year, and that is supposed to be a playoff team and a team that doesn't lose 13, 14 games. I think Jim Harbaugh with Russell Wilson is a nice fit. Can he bring Russell Wilson back to what he was a few seasons ago? Can they add to that offense? Can they make that offense good? Because that offense was bad this past season. They didn't score any points at all. Their defense was good. So they have a good defense. They just need to fix the offensive side of the ball. Adding Jim Harbaugh to the Broncos, I think, is a nice match there. I don't see either of those guys going to the Colts, Texans, or Panthers. I think those teams should look in other directions for head coaches. If you're the Texans, you just need to... I don't even know how you fix the Texans. The Panthers, they need an offensive head coach. Same thing with the Colts. They need to find their quarterback for the future because they've had 5 different quarterbacks basically in the past 5 years. They need to find their quarterback of the future, and they need to do that through the NFL draft. But that will do it for this Thursday edition of the franchise. We'll be back tomorrow on Friday with another episode. We are getting closer and closer to the Super Wildcard weekend in the NFL. Getting closer to the start of the baseball season. The NBA is rolling right now, but we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Franchise, available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. See you guys tomorrow.